Coming up, we've got the 411 on the EMP. I'll show you how to cut the power on your opponent and keep the lights on at home. Plus, the art of stealth. I'll break down the disruption tower and its underused counter, the Orca sensor pod. And enough with the Nerf avatar threads already. Here's a few ways to bring those Tier 3 units to their knees, treads, or tentacles. Let's get this party started. This is Command School. You're watching Command School. I'm Greg Kasavin. Next time you tune in, I'll be bringing you some Kane's Wrath strategies fresh from my very own copy of the expansion pack. Aren't you jealous? Pre-order Kane's Wrath today for a free DVD of Command & Conquer TV programming and access to an exclusive new map. And it just so happens you'll also be getting access to the upcoming beta of our newest CNC title, Red Alert 3. Maybe you've heard of it? But before the new sub-factions, epic units, and maps throw all your strategies to the wind, I've got a few more tricks up my sleeve. Let's kick it off with some avatar countermeasures in For Noobs Only. Avatars, mammoth tanks, and annihilator tripods, the bane of any base or just about anything on the ground for that matter. These vehicles are called Tier 3 because they're the third group of units to be unlocked. Tier 1 vehicles are available right away from the War Factory: Seekers, Predators, and Scorpions. Tier 2 vehicles, such as Corruptors and Flame Tanks, require a Command Post, Nerve Center, or Operations Center. And those Tier 3 tanks need a Tech Center and carry a big price tag, but they're well worth it. Each Tier 3 vehicle has a unique advantage. Avatars have the most customization with up to 4 different upgrades available on a per-unit basis: a second laser, flamethrowers, stealth, and stealth detection. Mix and match to your heart's delight. Mammoths don't leave a husk when killed, so the enemy can never capture them. Plus, they can be upgraded with railguns. Their secondary missiles also serve as respectable anti-air defense in a pinch. Finally, tripods can target multiple enemies at the same time with their 3 lasers, and can be upgraded with force fields to increase their hit points or absorb an EMP attack. And at close range, they automatically fire an EMP weapon that disables enemy units and structures, making them unstoppable in a one-on-one match. So how do you counter these titans? Of course, you can build up an armada of your own, but there are some more cost-effective methods that reward a bit more finesse. As GDI, build Zone Troopers. They're great against tanks and can absorb a lot of Tier 3 vehicle damage, but their greatest asset may be the Jump Jet. All tanks in CNC3 have less armor in the back, so Jump Jet some Zone Troopers over the tanks and fire at their vulnerable backside. With fire coming from all sides, the tanks can't just reverse move back to repair. A useful tip against Nod and Scrin is to micro a commando into the chaos. Every 1.5 seconds, your commando can one-shot kill any unit that leaves a husk, and the Nod commando is stealthed while standing still. The Scrin mastermind can't one-shot, but he can mind control that top-tier tank to turn the tables on the enemy. Before we move on, I'd like to introduce a new segment on the topic of Tier 3 vehicles. Many people have questioned the efficiency of Mammoths versus Railgun Predators and even Zone Troopers and APCs. To settle this once and for all, our crack team will run these 3 unit types through the gauntlet. Welcome to the new segment that uses quasi-scientific methodologies and research techniques to prove which units are better at accomplishing certain tasks. Until a balance patch, anyway. Well, it might not be quite so true to science, but just know that we'll dish out the damage and see who can survive. Facing off today, we have Mammoth Tanks, Railgun Predators, and Zone Troopers and APCs. Here's how it's going to work. We start a skirmish with 30,000 credits, build only a single refinery needed to unlock the War Factory, and call off the Harvester. With no income whatsoever, we tech up, build up, and upgrade as much as we can afford, then send the troops at an enemy con-yard. We'll test which units can destroy the con-yard the quickest versus the cost and survivability. My credits say the Zone Troopers are going to shut this party down, but let's take a look, shall we? First up, the Mammoths. Power plant, refinery, War Factory, Command Post, Tech Center. That's over 10,000 credits in less than 2 minutes, leaving enough cash to build 7 Mammoths at 2,500 each. They charge across the map in 1 minute and 6 seconds and take 8.8 seconds to level the con-yard. Not too shabby. Up next, we have the upgraded Preds. Identical build order, but they also have to drop 5,000 credits in 90 seconds on the railgun upgrade. That puts their cost at 15,300 credits, leaving enough cash for 13 railgun Preds. They cross the map in 42 seconds and destroy the con-yard in 7.9 seconds. Nice. And finally, we have some zone troopers and APCs. Power plant, refinery, barracks, war factory, command post, and tech center total 10,800 credits, leaving enough money for 9 APCs and 9 zone troopers. We load them up and send them across the map in a record 35 seconds, and they level the Conyard in just 6.2 seconds. Incredible. Zone troopers and APCs have the most speed and damage for your buck. But we haven't tested their combat rating against enemies that fire back. Guess how many avatar shots it takes to wipe out an APC with zone troopers? A 1, a 2, a 3. Yep, just 3. As for a mammoth tank, try 8, making them almost 3 times as durable. Maybe zone troopers and APCs aren't ready to unseat mammoth tanks just yet. And for the curious, a predator takes just 3 shots to kill 2. Well, the results are in, and here's our conclusion. Zone troopers and APCs do the most damage to the Conyard. Railgun Preds are the most cost-efficient, and mammoths have the best survivability. Each has its own place in online games, and in the real world the results aren't going to be quite this clean. It's up to you to decide which is going to be the best against your opponent. But now let's get back to the strategies. Check out these EMP tips in Casual 1. An EMP, or electromagnetic pulse, powers down anything mechanical, including buildings, tanks, and in some cases aircraft. Without their props spinning, aircraft fall from the sky and are destroyed by an EMP, while buildings and tanks are taken out for about 8 seconds. One of the most common uses of an EMP is to take base defenses offline. Target a cluster of power plants before sending in your tanks, and suddenly those obelisks aren't quite so menacing. But EMPs can also be used defensively. 8 seconds is an eternity when a flank is destroying the back of your base, or a massive army is approaching from the front. EMP the offending tanks and use that much-needed time to drop a base defense while rerouting your forces. So how do you get the EMP ability? All factions can grab the EMP structure on certain multiplayer maps, which triggers a 3-minute cooldown before giving you a large radius EMP that affects not only buildings and tanks, but also powers down aircraft, causing them to crash and burn. GDI players can also access the Shockwave artillery support power from their Space Command uplink. This one costs 2,000 credits per use and deals damage to the area it hits in addition to powering everything down. However, since the EMP shells only detonate on the ground, enemy aircraft aren't affected. Meanwhile, NOD players can upgrade their Raider buggies with an EMP at the Tech Lab for just 1,000 credits. This one has the most destructive potential, but takes a lot of micromanagement to execute. Each Raider buggy's EMP will power down everything in a small radius, including itself, for 10 seconds. 10 seconds after that, if the buggy has survived, it can fire yet again. What's more, a chain of buggies can leapfrog in to keep an area EMP'd if you have the Uber Micro to handle it. If you use the EMP buggies with some success, you might want to try teching up to Master Computer Countermeasures. It requires a 5,000 credit Temple of Nod to get this support power, but the cooldown is just 30 seconds. Whenever you use Master Computer Countermeasures, every one of your structures or vehicles powers up immediately. It's a great defense against EMPs, and it also makes your buggies much more powerful. Rush them in an EMP, and then use the support power. When the EMP wears off, the buggies can immediately re-EMP. This combo is very situational, but in the right scenario, you can leave your enemy scratching his head, staring at his frozen army and that defeated screen. Since Master Computer Countermeasures is on the temple, not your sidebar, select the temple and hotkey it. Then you can press the hotkey to immediately select the temple and click the ability whenever you need it. Now, before we hand it off to you for Command School Honors, it's time to check out some stealthy tactics in Casual 2. It's easy to put a price tag on a tank or base defense based on its hit points and damage. An obelisk costs more than a scorpion, and rightfully so. But what about disruption towers? They deal no damage to your enemies, and they still cost you money. It's a tough call. They're definitely not right for everyone. But if you're trying a new strategy or just want to keep your enemy guessing, a disruption tower can be invaluable. Try using a disruption tower to hide a battery of anti-air defenses on a superweapon or Conyard. Or use it to hide your tech structures and let your enemy think you're still on Tier 1 while you stockpile avatars. You can even make a stealthed wall of scorpions to prevent enemy troops from entering your base. Okay, maybe that one's a little outrageous. GDI can't make a stealth base, but they can detect stealth with an underused Orca support power, the Sensor Pod. Researched at the Tech Center for just 500 credits, these pods have no cooldown and cost only 200 credits per use. Drop a stealth but destructible pod anywhere on the battlefield and it'll be your eyes, even without troops nearby. And of course, it sees through stealth. You can also use sensor pods to target an enemy structure or vehicle. Does a Nod base have a disruption tower up? Throw a sensor pod on it, or put it on a war factory to monitor your enemy's unit production. They can't get rid of the sensor pod without selling that building. You can also use the Orca's pulse scan ability on a TIB field to reveal stealth harvesters, and then attach a sensor pod to the harvester itself, preventing it from re-stealthing and revealing all nearby harvesters. Or drop one on an avatar to monitor an attack wave as it approaches your base. One last note on sensor pods. Their batteries run out after 2 minutes and they disappear, but 2 minutes can be a long time in CNC3. Alright, now it's time to hand it off to GameReplays.org forum veteran Legendary in tonight's edition of Command School Honors. To get your strat featured on Command School, email the replay to commandschool@ea.com. Please include a summary of your strategy in the body of the email too. This is your last chance to show off a CNC3 strat before the expansion pack, so email today. Special thanks to Legendary for tonight's strategy, using foxholes for early game harassment. Start by building a power plant, barracks, armory, and then refinery. As you tech up, train 2 rifle squads, 5 missile squads, and a sniper team, and then research composite armor. Sneak them into the back of the enemy's base, scouting first with your stealthier sniper. Once you're in, call in more riflemen and missile squads with the airborne support power. At the enemy's base, use the dig-in ability to make 4 foxholes and evacuate the riflemen. File in the rockets, and target power plants, cranes, and refineries to really cripple your enemy in the early game. Don't forget to use your snipers and riflemen on any garrison clearers, like grenadiers or Black Hand. You may even be able to take out his connyard. Save the war factory for last. With all those rockets, vehicles don't pose much of a threat to you. Call in more support with the airborne ability, and if you're facing Nod, use radar scans to reveal harvesters. Remember, you can even dig in inside a TIB field to focus on those harvesters. Thanks, Legendary, for that great strategy. Now it's time for the GameReplays.org Tip of the Week.
The Tip of the Week, brought to you by GameReplays.org.
Tonight's tip is all about Husk management, a good tie-in for our earlier Tier 3 vehicle discussion. When an avatar, tripod, or juggernaut goes down, it leaves behind a husk at half health. This husk can be captured by an engineer from any player to add the unit to your army. It'll spawn for you at half health, but that's still a bargain considering an engineer is just 1/6 the price of a tripod. That's why it's always a good idea to destroy the husks you leave behind in your enemy's base. As GDI, if you decide to search and rescue your husks with engineers, be sure to bring along a rig. This will heal them up to full health as soon as they're under your control. If recovery isn't an option, you should leave a single juggernaut further back behind the attack. As the front line goes down, this rear juggernaut can target the husks safely out of range. As a scrim player, if you purchased force fields, your recovered tripods will spawn with new shields intact. A good way to recover husks is to get a fast-moving mastermind into the war zone, then have him teleport in assimilators. When you recover your husks, have some corruptors force fire on them to heal them up quickly, or use the repair drone's support power in the battlefield. Well, that's all the time we have for tonight's episode of Command School. So challenge those Tier 3 units, master the EMP, and take the poor old sensor pods for a spin. And be sure to tune in next month for an exclusive look at Kane's Wrath strategies. You can't afford to miss that episode. Dev tested, player approved, this is Command School. For Command & Conquer TV, I'm Greg Kasavin.